Dear Lord, thank you so much. Thank you for all the blessings you've done for us. Thank you for the healing that has happened in this room, through your program, through your word, through those who are living this walk, Lord. I ask that you strengthen Bobbi tonight, give her confidence, and take away any anxiety and fear she has tonight over sharing her story. Let it touch someone here or somebody watching later on. Lord, just strengthen her and be with her and with all of us tonight. Amen. Thank you.
How's everyone doing?
Great. Good.
My name is Bobbi. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus who struggles with resentment, anxiety, and control. I have had an addiction for most of my life with the need to escape reality and accept it for what it really is, which is a platform for Jesus to speak to his people through my pain that now has a purpose and my mess that is now a message of hope for others. For years I suffered emotional torture. I had to learn from a very young age to suppress my thoughts and feelings and to become numb and emotionally unavailable, to be able to keep up with my family's secrets and maintain the image that they wanted everyone else to see, instead of for what we actually were, which I now know was a severely dysfunctional and broken family, passing down generations of manipulation, abuse, and neglect that no one had the courage to break until now. I learned about denial very early after always being assured and told that it was everyone else who had the problems and mental illnesses, and that was the reason they were coming after our family, because they were jealous over what we had, which I still don't know what it was that we had that was so great. I was taught to always protect my father no matter what. Everyone in our family always had to protect his unhealthy choices and ways of living. I recall trying to stand up to him a few times, only to be told my eyes were deceiving me and that I was stupid if I actually believed what I had saw. He would easily be able to convince me and make me question the truth. My mother always backed him up and supported everything he said and did. When I was younger, my friends used to always think of our place as a safe haven, where if they were having issues at home, they could always come and stay at our place as long as they wanted. They also probably liked the fact that I was able to run the roads and always had money to do what I wanted. Anything that would keep me out of my parents' hair was acceptable. I wish now that they would have chosen another house. I would always wonder why my father would give my friends money. I would only come to realize later on it was given to make my father feel better about sexually imposing himself onto them. My father's secrets would start to flood out within the family when I was about 8 or 9 years old. He was finally sentenced to 6 months in jail for sexually assaulting my aunt. After that happened, Family and Children's Services were always showing up to the school, where RCMP would always come and pick me up to take me to the station for questioning. At which point I would completely shut down and go blank as I was taught to. Now, in between jail and taking off, sometimes for a year at a time when he didn't like how things were going, I would bicycle all across town to try to find him so I could beg him to come home so my mom could be happy again. A year later, Mom would welcome him home with open arms, regardless of what he had done or how he felt about it. He would show up with expensive gifts to lighten the burden of him returning. He didn't know how to show up any other way. The bullying over my father's actions at school became worse. I truly hated my life and wished that I would go to a foster home somewhere else. At age 11, I was molested by an older guy that had been part of the group of people I was hanging out with. I had secretly confided in a girl at school, and she told the principal. This would bring another rough couple years, which would bring more chaos and confusion in my life. At age 12, I started drinking heavily and not wanting to live anymore. My first suicide attempts would start and continue for the next few years. A few times I came very close to succeeding and not being here, but God had a different plan. I had attended Friday night fun night, and we learned about Jesus, and I remember being so mad at him for leaving me in this mess. If he was not going to get me out of this family, then I wasn't going to be here. At age 13, my friends all gathered together and called me to come and meet them. They had something important to tell me. I got there and they were all gathered in a circle and would each individually tell me how my father had been touching and sexually abusing them for years. My heart sunk. I was shattered and enraged all at the same time. I demanded that we all go and confront him, and he would boldly lie to all of our faces, and my mom would once again back him. Charges were laid, and shortly after, the court process would start up again. The RCMP gave my mother an ultimatum: either he leaves or I needed to go. I was the one that she would choose to go, and I was glad to be leaving. I moved in with an older friend of mine who would introduce me to freedom and living life on my own terms, partying and promiscuous behavior. I would continue to be used and abused and become more broken and disconnected from reality for years to come. Not knowing any better, I would choose partners who were just like my father, intimidating, controlling, abusive, emotionally, physically, and mentally. Trauma attracts trauma. And at 17, I had my daughter. I put most of the responsibility of parenting on my mother, and she happily agreed to have me home because Dad had left again. I continued to party and experiment with drugs. My daughter was used as a pawn against me after I decided I did not want to be in a relationship with her father anymore. I had enormous heartache from not seeing her, sometimes for 6 months or more at a time. Years of court battles back and forth. I never heard of God for a long time, but I would still find myself praying for a miracle many times when things were really bad. Years later, I drove by a church that was called New Life. I could definitely have used a new life at this point. They had a very inviting sign. A special speaker prophet was in town from the States, and his name was James Levesque. And the sign sounded almost like a dare to come in, so I went. It was a night that would leave me speechless. The heaviness of the people's pain and the anointing of the Holy Spirit was there that night, and it was like nothing I'd ever felt before. People were crying and being prayed over. He called me out of a large group to give me a word. He told me that Jesus knew me long before I was in my mother's womb, and that I was set apart, and that he had a special purpose for me. He said he wanted to quote Jeremiah 29:11, and for me to remember this verse. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. That encounter would spark something in me and cause me to become a part-time lukewarm Christian, off and on for years. I moved away and got into drugs again, but always had the thought that maybe there was something more to life. My mom passed away suddenly while I was in my active addiction. I loved how speed would give me energy and make my work ethic even better than it already was, and it would give me so much creativity that I never knew how to find any other way. That addiction would hold me captive for another year. I'm sad to say I attended my mother's funeral high just to be able to cope. I remember walking up to the casket and making a promise to her body that my father would never put me through what she allowed him to do to her for years, and that I forgave her for not putting us first. I ended up moving home to help my father, and because of the stress of everything, continued to drink heavily and experiment with cocaine. Within a short time of my mother passing away, I got caught for drinking and driving not once, but twice within a month, and spent 30 days in Burnside Correctional Facility. Once released, again, I tried moving back with my father, which I finally realized was not working. We put the house up for sale, and I moved in with a friend. My father moved out west, and I blew my entire portion of the money from the house, mostly on cocaine. I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired, depressed, utterly broken, and my life was completely unmanageable. That's when God started opening my heart, and when I came to the end of myself. 4 years ago, God spoke to my heart when I was at my lowest point. I needed to move back to Yarmouth where my daughter was and work on mending that relationship and be baptized by my pastor from the same church that had ignited that spark. They had been a big part of my life years ago and were still welcoming me back. It was still a rocky road for a while with drinking and unhealthy lifestyles, but God was working a lot of things out in me. At that time, I had regained my relationship with my daughter and had been introduced to the Wesleyan Church. The sermons touched me deeply, like they were meant for me. Like they knew exactly how I was feeling and what I was going through. I felt so connected and so at peace every time I went. Sometimes I would just break down and weep, and I knew without a doubt I was in the right place. It felt like home. It was like a welcoming embrace of unconditional acceptance and love. I started really digging into the Word to figure out who is God and who am I? How does this God see me? And it has been so freeing and healing. Jesus has given me a life that I could never have any other way. Last year I saw a paper with Celebrate Recovery on it with a sign-up sheet. It was a step study, a deep dive into all my different hurts, habits, and hang-ups to start the healing process and to learn tools to better deal with life on life's terms. I knew I needed to be part of it. At this point in my life, I was ready for anything and everything that would make me live a different life. I was ready to be vulnerable and dig deep and ready to stop carrying all these burdens that were so heavy around. I surrendered and was open to all it had to offer, and I worked it to the best of my ability, and I have seen great transformation. He is a true redeemer. He has gotten rid of all my strongholds and has shown me that he is the only stronghold I need. The desire to partake in things not meant for me has left for the most part. Today I put him first in my day, and I let him guide me. He has made me compassionate, dedicated, and determined, and he has filled me with so much mercy and urgency to tell others about him, how he saves us from ourselves. He meets us where we are at, but he loves us far too much to leave us stuck there. He is molding and shaping my heart each and every day to make it more like his, and for that I'm forever grateful. If I am willing, he is able. Now I don't tolerate any less than I deserve. I understand that it's okay to love people from a distance and not have to have them in my life, especially if it causes more harm than good. Step 9 tells us that we make direct amends to such people whenever possible, except to do so would injure them or others. I have made amends through Jesus for all the stuff that had happened with my father, and because of his illness and state of mind, I accepted that I would probably never have the opportunity to be able to speak to him about any of it. He's had dementia now for years, and after Mom passed away, it had only gotten worse. I did pray about it and left it in God's hands, but it did still bother me that he would never have to be held accountable here on earth for anything that happened. A few weeks ago, I had a sudden urge to call him that would not go away, so I called. My father answered the phone, and it was the strangest thing. He said he cannot believe that I am calling right now, and that I had been on his mind. He explained that he was lying in bed and having visions and flashbacks of everything bad he's ever done in his life. He said it was like he was dreaming, but he wasn't asleep. He was crying and very emotional and remorseful. He actually remembered things that he had never brought up before. It was almost like God intervened for the purpose of making an amends and also for me to offer forgiveness, and I did. I was able to explain to him about brokenness and relate to him in an understanding, non-judgmental way. I talked to him about the love of Jesus and how he forgives sins no matter how big or bad they are. I also explained to him that it's hard to do better when you don't know any better. That has been the situation with him. Growing up in abuse and who knows what else, he didn't have a good life either. I also had the opportunity to pray for him for the first time out loud. He shared with me that he'd been watching our online church services and that something had been different, and for the first time ever, he told me he was proud of the woman I've become. I've received freedom, love, self-worth, confidence, and a secure identity in Jesus. Today I serve every chance I get, and God has opened so many doors. I'll continue to do Celebrate Recovery for the rest of my life. I also do jail ministry, and I have visions and hope for the future. Had I not been so low and broken, I wouldn't know how to appreciate fully the life I have now. I'm thankful for the pain that I endured. It equips me to be able to relate to others in the same situations. I have such a passion for broken people. It's been said that your greatest ministry will be found in the area where you hurt the most but have been restored. At least that's how it is for me. I choose not to be stuck. I choose to be all that Jesus would want me to be. To the newcomer, there is hope. Sharing your pain hits people in a surreal, tangible way. It shows people that there is healing and freedom is possible. If he can restore me, he can also restore you. It shows strength and perseverance, and it develops character and endurance. I promise if you surrender it all to him and ask, he will come into your heart and completely do a restoration in your life. I'm trying to be for others who I needed when I was younger. I want to make a difference in the world. I've decided to make a blog and write about habits and strongholds that hinder our growth. Even if it helps one person, it is time well spent. I'm an active participant to things going on in my church as well as the community. I have made friendships I know will last a lifetime, a forever family. I am ready and willing for him to continue to use me wherever he sees fit. I sometimes get so overwhelmed with emotions and thinking about how far he has brought me and how I don't deserve it. I cry tears of joy sometimes that flow like endless rivers, but I'm so grateful for who he is. So grateful for a second chance to live again. Grateful for sobriety, grateful for willingness. Grateful for these scriptures which humble me every time I read them, and it reminds me of what he has done for me. And with him, I now know all things are possible. The best part is it's available to all who want it. Don't waste any more time. His unconditional love saw me through, and it also can for you. It's the best love a person can have. In Psalm 42, it says, "He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand." In 2 Corinthians 12:9, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Thanks for letting me share.